Hey, and welcome to another episode of Late Night with Take Three. Today we've got a fun episode. We're talking about America's favorite dad, Tom Hanks. But I've got a great panel here. With me, I've got Matt Kearns. Matt, how's it going?
Hey, doing good. This should be an interesting episode. Uh,
And yep, and we've also got Kirk. Kirk, how's it going?
Good, Malcolm. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. My first time on the show. First time on call with Matt, so that's pretty cool too. So yeah, I think we'll have some fun tonight.
Um, but yeah, but before we get into the fun, we've sadly got a bunch of sad news to talk about first because since we were last on 2 weeks ago, we've lost about 6 different people in various forms. We've lost Ennio Morricone, Charlie Daniels, Carl Reiner, Kelly Preston, Naya Rivera, and Grant Imahara all within 2 weeks, which is sad. But like a lot of them lived long, great lives. Some of them were cut way too short. But Kirk, do you have any thoughts on any of these deaths?
Yeah, Ennio Morricone was specifically was sad to me. I mean, obviously they're all sad, but seeing him pass because I know, like, I think Hateful Eight was maybe the last movie he did. So I mean, he was still technically active, and a lot of these guys, it's one thing, when you lose an actor, you lose that performance, you lose that voice. But with somebody like Morricone, when you lose that very distinct sound, and you just think there's never going to be another movie, whenever a really good composer passes away, it's like, so many movies are going to come out that deserve or should have their score. They're not going to now. It always makes me kind of sad.
Yeah. But Matt, do you have any thoughts on any of these deaths?
uh, yeah, I mean they're all it's sad when anyone passes, and of course, I mean all of these people have bodies of work that will long live them. I think Kelly Preston's the one that hit me the most because she's someone who I've been watching since I was a kid and stuff like Sky High and Jerry Maguire. Um, she and Twins. How could I forget Twins? She's also in that, so she was in a lot of stuff that I've been watching since I was really, really young. So that really hit me, and yeah, and I feel bad for John Travolta having lost his son before this, and now his wife. I feel for him very much.
Um, but yeah, like um, like for me, the one that hit me the most was probably Naya Rivera from Glee. Like if you people don't know me, I'm a big Glee fan, and when I first heard that she was missing, it's like, oh shit. But I mean, the fact that her last act was to make sure her son was safe, and all that, was just incredible. And it's like, and also Grant was another one which just came out of nowhere because like I saw it as like what, and like I didn't realize he had a health issue, and it's like just one of those. That one kind of blindsided me. Is like it hit me really hard as well. But it is sad. But it's like especially a lot of these, like Carl Reiner, he had a lot of great movie roles. Like his last role was in his brief cameo in Toy Story 4 when he voiced Carl Rhinoceros. But apparently that was legit the name. But anyway, going to move on to some other news that popped up over the 2 weeks. There's not really a lot of big ones, so a couple of them I probably actually won't bring up now. But one that came out yesterday was Noah Centineo has joined the cast of Black Adam as the character known as Atom Smasher. Um, but Matt, do you have any thoughts on this new cast of Black Adam?
It's definitely interesting. Adam Smasher. I can't really say he's ever been one of my favorite DC characters. Like I know him through his involvement with Justice League. I don't really know the actor that well, honestly. But I really love Shazam. It's one of my favorite DCU films. So I'm just really interested to see this movie and kind of what it is, given, sort of Black Adam's sort of very short backstory in Shazam. It's going to be interesting to see what this film is, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And Kirk, what are your feelings about Atom Smasher being in Black Adam?
I'm not too familiar with the character either, but I think what I love about DC Comics is the depth of like just weird characters that they have and the weird things they do with them in the comics. So it'll be interesting anytime they bring in somebody like out of the mainstream, out of the norm, out of like the big seven that you're used to seeing. I always think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, as bad as Suicide Squad turned out, I think that's one of the good things it did was try to bring in some lesser known characters. And if they could do that with a good movie, I think there's a lot of. I mean, that could be. DC always has the potential to put out like a Guardians of the Galaxy type of movie where just out of left field, all these characters you never heard of are really cool because DC has a lot of characters like that.
But yeah, like for me, I only know sort of Atom Smasher from his brief appearance in the Flash TV series when he was played by Edge from WWE. But I mean, this news kind of makes me happy because it shows that the Black Adam movie is still being made. It hasn't just been swept into somewhere like, but it's because this is the first sort of major confirmation that it's actually happening we've had in ages. Because I mean, we've had many comments from The Rock going, "It's definitely happening. It's coming. It's coming." But I mean, this is now. But the other one is, but staying in the DC camp is the new lead actress for Batwoman has been announced recently too, and it's going to be. I'm going to butcher this first name. Javicia Leslie is going to be the new lead character for Batwoman, and that character's name is going to be Ryan Wilder. But Kirk, I don't know what your feelings are of Batwoman, but what do you think of this new lead?
It'll be interesting. Now, I'm not familiar, Malcolm. You know better than me. Is this a character? The character they're bringing is a character from the comics, or is this a whole new character?
I'm not too sure, but
yeah, because I'm not familiar with that name, but I'm not too familiar with the character in general. So, but yeah, I mean, it could be interesting. Again, the DC television universe. Again, I don't watch it that much, but what I do see, I see a lot of like them trying a lot of new things and doing a lot of different stuff, but still staying true to the comics more than I think any other medium does, DC or Marvel. So yeah, I mean, it could be something turn out pretty good.
Matt, what are your feelings about this new lead actress for Batwoman?
I never watched the Batwoman show. I just really didn't have an interest after Elseworlds enough into the character. It's definitely interesting to be going this direction. I kind of thought they were going to go just the straight recast route, but I guess they're leaving things open for Ruby Rose to come back if she wants to. I can't say too much because I don't watch the show. I think I haven't really read that much about Batwoman. I think it's a character from the comics, but I could be completely off base on that. And even if it is a character from the comics, it's entirely possible it could just be a name-only deal. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Batwoman Season 2 pans out given this decision.
Yeah, I mean, I just did quick research, and from what I've read in various articles, this is a whole original creation for the Arrowverse. So, but I think they're going to amalgamate some of the traits from other versions of Batwoman. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. And I mean, but yeah, but that's kind of the major sort of movie TV news I think is big to talk about. Actually, one other one I did just notice here is Jude Law is also in talks for another live action Peter Pan movie as Captain Hook. Matt, do we need another live action Peter Pan movie, but what do you think of Jude Law playing Hook?
Jude Law is definitely an interesting choice. He's not the first person I would have thought of as Captain Hook, but I think he's a really great actor. I think he could pull it off. As far as do we need another one? No, I think I did not see Pan. Personally, I didn't really think it was necessary to. When it comes to live action versions, Hook is kind of as far as I go. I think the 2003 movie, if I'm correct on the year, it's fine. I think Jason Isaacs is a really good Captain Hook in it. I haven't seen it in quite a few years. I am a very big fan of the Disney film. It's my favorite Disney animated film, and I'm a fan of the book. It's a book, so it's bound to be readapted many times. So this isn't the craziest thing. I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say this is a Disney production. Is a live, and you know my feelings on those are they're pretty unnecessary and so the fact that having just done Aladdin and now doing this, they'll have done both of my favorites. So we'll always have the animated ones. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Kirk, what are your feelings about Jude Law playing Captain Hook?
I mean, again, like Matt said, it's not the first choice you think of, so you worry if they're going to some like weird, this is a whole new take on it. And I mean, that's kind of what Pan was, and that was awful. And to echo Matt again, if it's a Disney remake, off board right there. I mean, I think they've had 3 or 4 chances now, and they've kind of tanked on all of them. So I am not excited about that at all. I think. These, again, they're just cash grabs. If you look back at 2019, I always like to quote this stat. Disney made, I think they broke like $10 billion at the box office, and not a single dime was made off an original idea. Again, it just seems like it's more the same. So, yeah, I can totally pass on that.
Well, in Disney's defense, a lot of their company was built off of non-original ideas. I mean, Grimm Fairy Tales is where they made a lot of their money off of.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I've kind of got the same sense as you guys. Like, I don't think we need another live-action Peter Pan movie. I mean, like Disney remakes for me are sort of take it, leave it. Just because I'm one that I did not like The Lion King, but I did find some enjoyment in the Aladdin and Dumbo ones.
Not a live action remake. Fuck that movie. It wasn't. It was animated. My real version is coming out. COVID's put it on hold, but it's coming. Don't worry. Old school watchers, you know what's up.
But I mean, for me, I really do think the 2003 one that wasn't done by Disney, that was a more based on the book one. I think that
Fox. So I think technically they own that version now.
I mean, if they own it now, then great. But I think that version was really well done, and I really love Jason Isaacs' Captain Hook there. But that being said, we're going to move on to our main topic, which is Tom Hanks. But yeah, Matt, what is some of your favorite Tom Hanks movies?
Wow, you throw me off the bat there. I mean, my favorite of all time is Forrest Gump. It's in my top 15 favorite films of all time. It's my favorite performance of his. I think he gets to play with a lot in that movie that people don't give him a lot of credit for. It's just a performance that every time I watch it, I always think it's incredible. Big is another one. I think Big is Tom Hanks' defining role, because I think it came out in '88, and it was sort of, and it still is the film that sort of is all of who Tom Hanks is. It has the great comedy of, bosom buddies in Splash and the man with one red shoe. But then it also does show his dramatic chops that he would be putting to use in films like Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, and pretty much what he's done for the rest of his career. And I think that movie is incredible, and it's not an easy task to do, to play a 12-year-old in an adult's body convincingly, but he does it so well. And there are so many great moments, like when he's talking to his mom on the phone, and particularly towards the end of the movie, that are just like every time I watch it, I just have to get teary-eyed because it's such a great performance. It makes me so happy that he got nominated for an Oscar. Of course, he didn't win, but still, the fact he got nominated for it still makes me happy, because it reminds me that at one point the Academy recognized a lot of performances, unlike fucking today. But that's neither here nor there. Other stuff. I mean, the Toy Story trilogy I grew up with. Well, the first two. The third one came out when I was older. But so the first two films, those were definitely films I watched a lot as a kid. So yeah, there's a lot of, that's just all the stuff off the top of my head.
But Kirk, what are some of your favorite Tom Hanks movies?
For me, peak Hanks is like mid 80s to early 90s. I'd say like up till like A League of Their Own, before I'd say pre-Philadelphia, and just when he was that when he was that, just that comedic actor. And I mean, he did more. You could see there's a germ there of how talented he was and what he could do. But when he was just kind of that guy, that era of Hanks reminds me of like a Jimmy Stewart or a Cary Grant, where you kind of just give him a script and he makes it his own. He makes that character his own. He puts a stamp on it. And it's talking about those old time actors. He is kind of a throwback. Any of those movies, The Money Pit, Big, Joe versus the Volcano. You could take all those movies and have released them in the 1940s, and they'd fit in perfectly. They're just that style of comedy, and so much because of what he brings to it. So that's my favorite of him. And I, obviously Saving Private Ryan, Toy Story, all that. He's done a lot of great stuff since. But for me, that's always that's really the Tom Hanks that I enjoyed. Before, I don't know, like I don't want to say before he was taken seriously, but back when he was like, I mean, before he had all that kind of like gravitas on his shoulders, when he was just like a guy having fun with movies.
Yeah, and like for me, some of my favorite ones, like I really like the Toy Story movies. They were great. One that I've been meaning to watch and just waiting for it to come onto streaming is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I really want to see that, but it's one of those ones that just hasn't come around yet. I mean, this may come as no shock to anyone, but I tend to like some movies that people don't like. I really like them in the Da Vinci Code trilogy. I really do like those movies, and I think he is great in them. But I mean, Big, Forrest Gump, some of those ones are there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year with the Oscars and all that. Whether he gets some love for Greyhound that's just come out, but yeah.
Will Greyhound be able? It isn't an Apple TV exclusive?
With the new rules that the Oscars have brought in, if it was intended for a theatrical release, but had to go to streaming.
I felt like it was an Apple TV intended only release. I didn't think it was supposed to get a theatrical release.
It was slated for theatrical release, but I think Apple TV then brought it for streaming.
Yeah, right before COVID hit, that's when you started to see the trailers. That was going to be a theatrical release.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those ones. It's the same with Netflix. Really, when they buy a movie like Isn't It Romantic, as an example, there was one that was in theaters over in the States, but it was just Netflix only over here. But it was still labeled as a Netflix original, even though it was in theaters. That's just it's just one of those weird things. They just want to. The streaming services just want to see their name on movies to claim them.
Well, I mean, if they produce them, because if you look at like Manchester by the Sea, that was an Amazon produced film, so it's
that's true. But I mean, it's like in general, the Oscars next year is going to be interesting to see what makes it. But yeah, this has gone quicker than what I thought.
Well, I'll say something. I mean, a little more about Tom Hanks. You brought up Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I feel very connected to that about Mr. Rogers because Mr. Rogers from Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh. They filmed that in Pittsburgh. Tom Hanks was here filming, and when they had the shooting at the synagogue back in 2018 in Pittsburgh, he was very active, speaking out about that. It seemed like he was really connected to the city. So that was really cool just to have him here and have him, be a unfortunately something so tragic, but still have his, like you said, Malcolm, he's everybody's favorite dad. To have his voice at that time was really nice. Plus just really cool to watch that movie and see, like I said, it's a very Pittsburgh movie. Even the New York scenes, the stuff that's in New York, that's all Pittsburgh. And being from here, like you look out their window, like no, that's not New York. That's Liberty Avenue. That's Stanwix Street. That was a lot of fun. And I thought he was great in that. And a lot of his biographical roles, Saving Mr. Banks, I really enjoy him in. Captain Phillips. So, when he's playing those real life people, he really brings something to that. I think he seems like a guy who really, connects with the character he's playing and really wants to be true to it and honor those characters.
But yeah, this is one that, and I know I got a lot of shit for this from various people, but I just recently seen the documentary about Fred Rogers, just because I had no idea anything about it, because he wasn't really a big thing over in New Zealand. And I mean, I thought the documentary was fine, but it's just, to me, the documentary didn't really explain a lot about Fred Rogers. It was more about his show, and just and that's kind of what I was looking for.
Well, that's what the documentary was about.
I mean, it's one of those ones. Like I thought it was interesting, but it didn't answer a lot of questions that I may have had about him, which is why I didn't connect with that documentary. But for me, it's one of those ones like I want to see A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, because I want to see if that kind of helps me connect with him more.
While we're on the conversation, what were you hoping the documentary would tell you?
I mean, it was just more to tell me more about Fred Rogers as a person, as a I mean, I thought the documentary was great. It's really not something that I can explain.
I mean, if you want to know more about who Fred Rogers was as a person, I would say just watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Fred Rogers was a man who was not a character. That was him.
Yeah.
He wore who he was on his sleeve. So I mean that legitimately. Watch the show if you want to know who he is. And I will also suggest, I think it's I haven't watched the documentary in a bit, but if you also want to know who he is, look up when Congress was going to cut PBS's funding. Look up his speech to Congress if you really want to know who he was. That really just sort of cements him. That, and then also look up at an award ceremony when he meets a boy with cerebral palsy who was actually on the show when he was older. Both of those videos will definitely tell you who Fred Rogers was as a person.
Yeah. That's
more about him.
That's the thing. I can understand if you're not familiar with him as a person, you'd watch that, you'd be like, okay, what's behind the curtain? What's the real guy? And I think that's kind of the point, is that there was no other Fred Rogers. He was very sincere. And that comes across when you do get to see the movie, the Tom Hanks movie. That comes across as well, because I think was pretty true to life as far as his personality and how he was. But there was no separation between, Fred Rogers the person and Mr. Rogers the TV character. That's just who he was, and it's hard to believe. I understand you walk away from it and be like, yeah, there's got to be more to it, because nobody's like that, but he was.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what it comes down to is with me, the fact that I've never really grown up with Mister Rogers because I just the show was never on in New Zealand.
Sure.
I think that maybe a part of it too. And we've got a mystery guest of Abe.
Hey,
Yeah. But Abe, what are some of your favorite Tom Hanks movies?
Malcolm. I wasn't thinking we were going to start with the topic that early, but
I mean, we've already covered the news.
oh really? Okay. So
Yeah.
I gotta go with. I think my favorite one is Sleepless in Seattle, which I guess you all guys have talked about it because it's a great movie. Please,
No, I
what
actually
do you
didn't.
have?
It hasn't come up yet,
No?
so have at it.
Okay, so that one, I just, I'm a sucker for romantic comedies, and that one is a classic, and that it's a pinnacle of what Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan did as a on-screen
Duo?
couple, if you may call it. So yeah, that one. I also have to say Saving Private Ryan. I think, which I guess you guys has it come out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the last scene of him, like dying. Well, spoiler alert, he dies in the movie. Wait, he dies, right? Yeah, he dies.
Yes,
It's not
earn this.
I
Yeah.
just
That's
think
a
you guys
big
are
moment
looking
in
at
that
the movie,
film, Abe.
What is? Yeah. Oh, he dies. He was a history teacher, right, or an English one?
Yeah, he was
Something
a
like that.
history teacher.
Yeah, which it's a really powerful scene. And let me put off Tom Hanks' filmography because if not, I'm gonna forget.
Well, I'll throw this out real quick. You said Sleepless in Seattle, Abe, but out of the 3 movies he did with Meg Ryan, what's everybody's favorite?
Probably Sleepless in Seattle, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sleeps in Seattle is my favorite. Although I mean, You've Got Mail was pretty good on its own as well.
I saw that once, so I can't really speak to it.
Yeah, You Got Mail is great because it's like, what am I confusing the movies? Yeah, because like in both movies they're chasing each other, right? Kind of, and they pretty much have the same plot. So I guess that works. Yeah, Sleeping in Seattle, I think that scene in the Empire State Building, like it's pretty great, and it hits you. So. I think
See, I'm a Joe versus the Volcano guy. I just rewatched that movie a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I love that. Meg Ryan's great in that. I mean, she plays 3 separate characters, and if you're not paying attention, you're not even going to know it because she is just a chameleon in that movie. She plays 3 very different, distinct individuals, and he has a very different relationship with each of them, and it's kind of like he's developing a relationship with the same person almost, but in a different way, and like it just goes. And he is great in that. You see. I mean, that's like a great character arc. Just him going from that just like broken schlub, that in his workaday life to really discovering himself. And just even like the way he looks at the beginning, he's all pale and sickly, and he just becomes something else. And Ossie Davis has a great little role in that movie. His role is I can't remember the character's name, but it's the limo driver. He's only in it for 5 or 10 minutes maybe, but he steals the show because he's fantastic.
Yeah. But anyway, I've thought of a fun game, which totally isn't to drag the time out a little bit long, so it doesn't end up being a half-hour episode of Late Night Take
Can
3.
I mention another movie?
I mean, if you can mention another movie very quickly.
Look, this is this movie which I think is pretty underrated, but still made me cry on the theater. Sully, and I think
Yeah, Sully was good.
I just remember crying the shit out of that movie. It was an empty theater, Mexicans really don't care about Americans.
The Miracle
that much.
Nelson.
Yeah. Well, I just have to say, I think he's great. I think it's classic Tom Hanks. And,
Aaron Eckhart's really good in that movie too.
Yeah,
But yeah, Sully's just been dropped onto Netflix over here, so I'm probably going to watch it at some stage. It was one that I missed in the theaters myself. But
do you actually know about the story about that movie, Malcolm, or is it just going to be a film to you?
I know.
I'm a New
I know.
Yorker, so the Miracle on Hudson was a pretty big deal.
I heard about that when it happened.
Me too.
But but anyway, the fun game that I thought out was should he have won at the Oscar that year? So I'm going to go down the many Tom Hanks Oscar nominations / wins and see if people think he should have won the Oscar. His first nomination was for the movie Big. He was nominated up against Gene Hackman for Mississippi Burning, Dustin Hoffman for Rain Man, who won, Edward James Olmos for Stand and Deliver, and Max von Sydow for Pele the Conqueror. I'm going to start with Abe. Should Tom Hanks have won over Dustin Hoffman?
No, as much as I love Beak, which I guess you guys got mentioned, I remember watching the movie as a kid and I didn't know what was it about, but I was just so happy watching it. We watched it like a couple years ago. It's still a really great movie. But as much as I'm not a fan of Rain Man, because I don't know, I guess the movie you cannot deny how great Dustin Hoffman's performance in that movie is, and his rapport with Tom Cruise and the story about brotherhood and everything. I think he should have.
But Kirk, should Tom Hanks have won over Dustin Hoffman?
That's a good question, because I mean their two performances obviously very different, but they're similar in the fact where they both had to kind of put on a mental capacity that that wasn't theirs. I think I probably still would have gone Hoffman. I think he just goes a little deeper in his performance than Hanks did. Not Hanks was great. And I think if we're going on a range alone, just from drama to comedy, everything else, you might lean a little bit more towards Hanks. But I think there's just a little more meat on the bone of Hoffman's performance. So I'd give it to him by a hair.
And Matt, should Tom Hanks have won over Dustin Hoffman?
No, I love Tom Hanks. I love him in Big, and I love that film. But I think what Dustin Hoffman did in Rain Man is incredible. It was a very deserved win. He completely created a whole persona and that entire movie, like Abe said, about brotherhood and all that. And for him to create a character that has no beginning, middle, or end, and yet still feel like a completed character is just the brilliance of that performance.
And yeah, I mean I agree with everyone. I think I enjoy Rain Man. I think it's a good movie, but and Big is also good as well. But I think Dustin Hoffman is the better performance out of the two, and I think he deserved to win. But we move on to the next one, which is Tom Hanks's the first time Tom Hanks won. He won for Philadelphia. He was up against Daniel Day-Lewis for In the Name of the Father, Lawrence Fishburne for What's Love Got to Do with It, Anthony Hopkins for The Remains of the Day, and Liam Neeson for Schindler's List. Kirk, I'm going to start with you on this one. Should Tom Hanks have won for Philadelphia?
This is hard for me because the only movie I've seen on that list is Schindler's List. So I really can't speak to the performances. But who did he won that? He won that year.
He won that year.
That is a stack. Just from what I have, like I haven't seen the entire movies. Obviously, I've seen scenes and this and that, and I've seen what they've done. So that is a stacked year. If he earned it, he really earned it because he's going to get up against some powerhouse actors. But I can't say. I got to kind of abstain from this one just because of my unfamiliarity with the field as a whole.
Matt, should Tom Hanks have won for Philadelphia?
I think Tom Hanks is great in Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia is a great film. I think Denzel didn't get nearly as much credit for that movie. Like, he's really good in that. But Liam Neeson should have won. He just for that last scene alone with the pin, right there. And again, Tom Hanks is incredible throughout the entire movie, and particularly what that film meant in 1992 for the homosexual community. But Liam Neeson, it is, to me, I put Liam Neeson's performance on par with the likes of Alec Guinness and Bridge on the River Kwai, and now his name is escaping me from To Kill a Mockingbird. But Gregory Peck. I put those three performances are some of the greatest performances I've ever seen in film. so Liam Neeson should have won.
Yeah.
Anthony
Yeah.
Hopkins is great, though. I'll say that.
Yeah. This is one I actually have seen. Philadelphia. I do think it's a good movie, but I agree with Matt on this one. I think Liam Neeson in Schindler's List is a more powerful performance. I think should have won. Abe, should Tom Hanks have won for Philadelphia?
I want to echo everything Matt says, but I think just analyzing, like, we do Gone with the Wind. Like, this one of those movies about the narrative of the film, and it was more of what Matt said about the people with HIV and the LGBT community of just getting started that movement and everything. And it's not a knock on his performance, that whole movie. It's really good, but his performance is pretty outstanding in it. But I would have gone with Liam Neeson, honestly.
But anyway, we go to the next year after this, which Tom Hanks also won. He won for Forrest Gump. Also nominated, we had Morgan Freeman for Shawshank Redemption, Nigel Hawthorne for The Madness of King George, Paul Newman for Nobody's Fool, and John Travolta for Pulp Fiction. Matt, should Tom Hanks have won for Forrest Gump?
I think that's a really good bunch of actors with a lot of different performances. I think John Travolta is great in Pulp Fiction, but I think Tom Hanks should have won for Forrest Gump. I think what he did with that character and that performance, how it seems surface level, but there's a lot of different elements he plays. And particularly when you get near the end of that film, all the stuff with his son and with Jenny, it's so great and it's so powerful, and it's not easy to play a character like that like you think it would be, because it seems like it could be a caricature, but it's not. And yeah, he's just so good that I have to say that he should have won.
I like Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump, but I'm actually going to be slightly different for this one. I think Morgan Freeman should have won for Shawshank. I think he does Morgan Freeman does a very powerful performance in Shawshank Redemption. I think overshadows Tom Hanks from Forrest Gump, but I think those two are probably the top two sort of roles in this one. Well, I like the other, like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. I think it was definitely between Morgan and Tom for the this year. Abe, should Tom Hanks have won for Forrest Gump?
Yes, he should have.
I mean, he did win, but yeah.
Just I think he did, because that movie also made me cry. No, but it's really great, and as Matt said, like, it's hard. Like, you can go like what's the name of that?
Tropic Thunder. Don't go full.
You never go full.
No, go full.
That shouldn't
No
be.
full scum. He's stupid.
Yeah, but he goes ranges, and it's a pretty emotional. It can be criticized, that movie, but still it's pretty effective. It's a classic for a reason, and I think Tom Hanks cares. I think he's in pretty much every single frame of the film. So, well, unless when he's young and everything.
Yeah, when he's young
Yeah,
first.
Yeah, but yeah, I think.
And Kirk, should Tom Hanks have won for Forrest Gump?
I'm not as big a Forrest Gump fan as a lot of people are. I think the movie is more, especially all the Oscar love it got. I thought it was more about the like cultural phenomenon of the movie than it was the actual quality of the movie. I know you guys will probably disagree with me on that, but I'm not saying it was bad. I just think there are a lot better movies that came out that year. 94 was a stacked year, and I think I kind of wish Forrest Gump would have came out another year, got that attention, and all those other movies that were in the mix could have like battled it out for that for those Oscars, because like I said, I feel like it was just like this cultural monolith that wasn't going to be stopped by anything. Personally, just because I love the movie so much, I would have went with going with my heart. I would go with John Travolta for Pulp Fiction because I love that movie so much. But yeah, I think the earned winner would be Morgan Freeman in Shawshank. That movie is that's another one I just rewatched recently. That movie made me cry. Just the end when, and just his speech at the end, Zewataneo. When I hear him say Zewataneo, man, I start to tear up. But just that whole gray movie and then them on the beach at the end. And just the I have to this day I have no idea what those two Italian ladies were talking about. I mean, that movie that's a movie with such heart, and Morgan Freeman is the heart of that movie. So I probably would have went with him. But again, like I said, you weren't stopping Forrest Gump that year.
Yeah. But we go to the next one, which is 1998. Tom Hanks was nominated for Saving Private Ryan. Roberto Benigni won for Life is Beautiful. Also nominated was Ian McKellen, Nick Nolte, and Edward Norton for American History X. Nick Nolte was Affliction. Ian McKellen was Gods and Monsters. And this is one I can't talk about because I've only seen Saving Private Ryan. I haven't seen any of the other ones from this year. So I really can't say if he should have won. I mean, he gives a good performance in Saving Private Ryan. That's all I'll say. I can't compare it against Life is Beautiful. Abe, should Tom Hanks have won for Saving Private Ryan?
No, as much as I like that movie, I don't think it's his strongest performance. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. But yeah, I mean,
Can you hear me?
Kirk, should Tom Hanks have won for Saving Private Ryan?
Sorry.
I'm just glad we're not talking about it. If it should have won,
I was thinking. Nope. I think Roberto Benigni was well deserved, and that's it. Because my
Just drop, Abe. Just drop.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that, Kirk. But
no, that's fine. No problem. Yeah, I'm just glad we're not talking about whether or not it should have won Best Picture because I'm sick of that conversation. Even though it should have. No, I think Roberto Benigni is great in Life is Beautiful. I think it's a great movie. But I think it was more about him winning. It was kind of like that moment. He was like again, it's just the impact he had. He was Roberto Benigni is a very charismatic person. I think there was probably a big push for him to win to get him the foreign language guy. So I don't think he gave a bad performance. I really enjoy that movie. I really like Life is Beautiful. I think he's very good in it. But I may have leaned more towards Hanks. Just because of the depth that he goes to in that movie. He goes to some pretty dark places and really has to carry that movie on his shoulders and that story on his shoulders. So yeah, I mean, you could call it a toss-up because it is close, but I think I'd lean more towards Hanks.
But yeah, I'm gonna bring up a comment from Star Drew. Apollo 13 was 1995.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even nominated for the Harris.
I think Ed Harris was the only person nominated from that film.
Yeah. But yeah, we move on to the next one, which I believe is 2000s. Or 2000. But Tom Hanks was nominated for Castaway. Russell Crowe won for Gladiator. Also nominated was Javier Bardem for Before Night Falls, Ed Harris for for Pollock, and Jeffrey Rush for Cruise. I've lost track of who I've gone to, but Kirk, should Tom Hanks have won for Castaway?
This is another one where I haven't seen all the movies that year. I actually, when we started talking about this conversation, I added Castaway to my queue because that's a big glaring blank spot for me for Hanks. But who did you say who was? Russell Crowe. I don't think should have won that year. I think that was another one where we were kind of like in this era of like the big budget, epic movies winning a lot of Oscars. And I don't. He's good in that movie. It's a great movie. It's a great performance. It's a lot of fun. But I definitely don't think he was best actor that year. So if I was going to give it to anybody, why not Hanks?
Matt, should Tom Hanks have won over Russell Crowe?
I disagree. I think Hanks is fantastic in Castaway, but I think Russell Crowe did a really incredible job with a role that could have been such a stock action character to not be, and to bring in all this different stuff that and particularly given when you know the behind the scenes of that film, how they started shooting with like half a script, and they were constantly, like every week, they were coming in with new pages for him to create such a full and complete character that was not there. Like it wasn't like that character was on the page. Like there were no pages essentially, and to come out with that performance, yeah, I think Crow should have won that year. Even though I really do love Hanks and Javier Bardem, I think Crow deserved the Oscar that year.
But yeah, I mean, for me, this is I've seen the two important ones from this. I've seen Castaway and I've seen Gladiator.
Damn, Malcolm, I've seen the two important ones.
Well, what I meant for this discussion, I've seen the two that we need to, like Gladiator and Castaway. Like I've seen those two, but anyway, like for me, I like Tom Hanks in Castaway. But I think Russell Crowe is the best performance out of the two for Gladiator. But I mean, in saying that, I think Tom Hanks in Castaway is one of those films that we didn't actually talk about. But when you're acting against an inanimate object for a good chunk of the movie, and just acting on your own, and pretty much it's not an easy thing to do at all. But I think Tom Hanks did it well. Abe, should Tom Hanks have won over Russell Crowe? And
Look, he has not even the better performance in the movie. That one goes to Wilson, right? But still, no, I think
yes, that's the best performance.
It's great. I think that's why it stands the test of time. That's why they're thinking of doing a sequel to it, because it's so great, and that comes from Ridley Scott's direction, but also Russell Crowe performance. As Matt says, because I didn't remember, like they didn't have. I don't remember the name of the actor. I'm sorry, but he's so great, and whenever you make a feature that has focus, Russell Crowe.
All I heard was whenever you make a performance, Russell Crowe. That's all you need.
But anyway, like that ends sort of Tom Hanks's best actor sort of run. Like he has been nominated for best actor since then. But he got his first best supporting actor last year. He lost to Brad Pitt from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Also nominated with Anthony Hopkins for The Two Popes, Al Pacino and John Pesci both for The Irishman. Matt, should Tom Hanks have won for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood?
Nope. Brad Pitt deserved that Oscar. That was my favorite performance of 2019. I was very excited. Mandy knows. I talked about it on Gone with the Wind a lot. So, yeah. No, I love Hanks, but Brad Pitt. Cliff.
Abe, should Tom Hanks have won over Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Okay, Abe's gonna type, and I will say what he writes. Folks.
That's
and
dangerous.
I will not do an accent. You think I'm gonna do that? No.
But while we wait for Abe to type, Kirk, should Tom Hanks have won over Brad Pitt?
This is tough because, like I said, Mr. Rogers is personal to me, and he was great in that movie. And I loved Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes. He was so good in that. I love both those performances actually, and I would have been fine with both those actors in that movie getting Oscars because they were both just two great performances. But yeah, I'm with Matt. I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was by far my favorite movie last year, and Pitt was great in it. And I wanted to see that movie win all the Oscars. So I think this was the only one it won, right?
I think it won costume and set.
Okay.
As well.
All right,
It
but
didn't win as many as it should have. But.
yeah, I'm not taking any Oscars away from Once Upon a Time because that movie was great. So yeah, I'd stick with Pitt.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion
Well,
on this.
Pacino and Pesci were incredible in Irishman. Ooh, now Malcolm's frozen.
I mean, like my opinion. My opinion on this might change once I see A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. But for now, I say that I think Brad Pitt did deserve this. And I think, because as much as I like Anthony Hopkins from The Two Popes and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, I thought they were fine in those movies. But I didn't think they did win. Those ones deserve to win over Pitt itself. But yeah. But anyway, with that being said, and I'll bring up this one because from what I've heard, he was better in Ad Astra. But I mean, I don't know. Like I've heard some people say that. I haven't seen Ad Astra, so I can't.
It's tough because it's hard to sometimes separate the movie from the performance. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was such a better movie, and he's definitely a lot more entertaining. And your eyes are a lot glued to him a lot more on Once Upon a Time than in Ad Astra. So if I go back and rewatch Ad Astra, I might find some different layers to that performance. But I definitely enjoyed Once Upon a Time more.
But Abe, should Tom Hanks have won over Brad Pitt for supporting in 2020 earlier this year?
This is hard for me because Tom Hanks movie, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, is pretty damn great. I think that's his best performance of this decade. I'll put it like that. Even Captain Phil, so great. Sully, I mentioned, so great. However, I think Brad Pitt just make an impression on everybody, and he just shines in. That the character is perfectly reading for him, and yeah, it's hard to say Hanks when considering what Pete did.
Yeah, I mean, and that being said, it's really hard to believe that it's been there's been a 20-year gap for Tom Hanks to be nominated for something else. Because I mean, there's a lot of movies in between. I think he should have been nominated for, like Captain Phillips. I think he should have been nominated for. From what I've heard about Sully, I think people have been praising his performance in that too. So it's surprised that he wasn't nominated for that as well. But with that, we have reached the end of the show. But Abe, before your internet sort of just dies on you again, where can people find you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at AbrahamF25. You can follow me on Instagram at AbrahamFlores25, and you can do that.
Kirk, where can people find you online?
I am on Letterboxd, Kirk Kowal on Letterboxd. That's the best place to come, and we can share opinions on movies. And all the Take Three, all the family places on Facebook. Can I talk about Multiplex? Is that all right? Real quick, Malcolm?
Yeah, that's all right.
Right now on Wednesday nights, 9 Eastern, on Your List Sucks over at Multiplex. It's me, Caleb Boatman, Caleb Coho, and Jake Maragoni. We're all going through our top 100s. We are in this week. We will be doing number 30 through number 21, so we're getting towards the end. But if you get a chance, go back and watch the old episodes. It's been a lot of fun, and these last three are going to be pretty crazy. So check that out.
Matt, where can people find you online?
You guys, as always, can follow me at Kearns_Matthew on Twitter, MattMovies611 on YouTube and WordPress, and right here as host of Second Look. Episode is still in the works. I'll be coming out when I get time. So look forward to that.
But yeah, and you can find me on Tape 3, where I host Late Night Tape 3. I don't have a topic planned for next week, but when I do, I'll announce it. But tomorrow on Ranked Him is going to be top 12 war movies. It is going to be a real battle, most likely. We're going a little bit earlier tomorrow. It's going to start at 7 as opposed. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And also on Full Metal, I host Full Metal Classics on Sundays. And also I do Full Metal Random on Tuesdays. This week is going to be a Pixar match between Chris Diaz, Nico Suave Rigoli, and Mark Menchaca.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, until next time, we're not on Zoom, but we'll Zoom on out of here.